When we look at the world's economy today, some nations have rather fallen into the grasp of their own failure, mostly led by their demise due to failed public governance, the most problematic of which stems from a debt crisis, a term that is used when a government or a country has lost its ability to repay back the money it had first borrowed. And the most recent country to ever have been hit by this unfathomable moment is Sri Lanka. A tiny country located around South Asia, it has a population of over 22 million people. Sri Lanka had gone down a rough road after it had defaulted on its foreign debts, which was its first ever since it had its independence, implying that a crisis had never happened in the past, but only did so during the modern era where economic growth was limitless and seen across the poorest destinations. This terror had taken the South Asian island nation into a crisis never seen before. Its inflation hit all-time highs, its government had declared a state of emergency, and had seen several government officials step down. And these are just a variety of other problems as problems after problems keep rising, and nobody can stop it. This was as some have attributed it because of the fact that the government had taken in too much debt. According to the International Monetary Fund, IMF for short, Sri Lanka had a debt to gross domestic product or GDP ratio of over 109.3%, implying that their debt is far more than their 2021 national GDP, which as some economists say that Sri Lanka may be in deep trouble, as the calculations of a GDP is the best way to measure one's economy. Now, this has led to finger-pointing. Was it the government's fault, or was it because of the notorious debt trap diplomacy as some have termed it, concerning Chinese loans? Well, this is an arguable statement as Chinese loans had only accounted for about 10% of Sri Lanka's total foreign debt in 2020, which is quite lower than Japan, which has 11%. But this is not the question in today's video. The question is, as Sri Lanka falls because of its debt crisis, can Bangladesh experience the same way? Many arguments are spurring off across the South Asian region because of the fact that Bangladesh has in recent years been one of the most aggressive nations to have ever emerged. It was aggressive in its economic growth, its popularity as a nation, and most importantly as well, is its way of borrowing money off of foreign capital for the help of improving the nation. These forms of loans have, as some argued, come from China, the same country which has been partly blamed for Sri Lanka's crisis. After all, China has been rapidly playing a strong figure in Bangladesh, becoming one of its most important bilateral partners in recent years, investing approximately $1.7 billion from 2018 to 2020, and having a bilateral trade of over $12 billion. Furthermore, China is not the only country it had asked for loans from. It had gathered a lot from different nations ranging from the US to Japan to South Korea and so many more. Hence, we can see why some have seen that Bangladesh might experience in the same disastrous way, as its debt have also risen. Well, the thing about Bangladesh, however, is that it's not relatively the same way as it was for Sri Lanka. In fact, it is actually far from it. Bangladesh is very much the opposite of any nation that is going to go through the troubles of having to pay down their debt. This is even after the country has experienced tremendous growth, and the fact that they have in recent years been expanding their portfolio of infrastructure investments, notable public spending that is known to be somewhat expensive. To dig into the actual numbers as to why Bangladesh may not experience the same way, we took a look at the same figure that we used for Sri Lanka's debt to GDP ratio. According to the end of the fiscal year of 2020 to 2021, Bangladesh had reported having a 13-year high of debt to GDP, which might sound bad, but it is actually just around 38% lower than Sri Lanka's 100% or so figure, and nowhere near the recommendations given by the IMF, which is around 70%. Moreover, while Bangladesh had indeed experienced a rising debt to GDP in the recent 13 years time span, its total ratio had actually gone down since data provided in 1995, when it had over 49% and even reached a high of 50% in 2002, but since then the debt to GDP ratio had gone down, significantly over the years that followed. Although at the same time frame, Bangladesh had indeed seen its external debt rise from around $15 billion in 1995 to over $60 billion in 2021. This is still a false, or rather misleading statement to say that Bangladesh has an alarming rising debt figure, as its economic annual output is far higher than its external debt by a large figure. The GDP is estimated to be $416 billion. Moreover, external debt still needs to be subjected to many details, since external debt is composed of both the private and the public sectors. Further, we would also like to pinpoint the fact that the nation's debt that continues to rise is perfectly normal. Every country around the world, especially those vying to become a fast-growing country, will need these instruments to become so. This was what had happened to Bangladesh. Its debt had gone up in recent years, and at the same time its GDP had gone up far faster. Hence, we had seen their debt to GDP ratio had dropped to lower record numbers. Now, another argumentative question that some may have is the fact that this may all change in the future. Their debt could soon balloon faster than the growth of their GDP. While that may be true, this is what we think would be relatively difficult to see far out in the future. First of all, Bangladesh is among the fastest growing economies in the entire world, and outpacing it with the form of debt would be difficult. Second of all, Bangladesh has a strong earnings-driven economy. Even during the pandemic that had caused economic crises around the world, Bangladesh emerged with remittance earnings of over $25 billion, along with its export industry that had paved the way for over $40 billion in earnings. Figures that do not even account for their other economic activities and enough to pay down their debts and any interest it occurs. Even far lower than the estimates given by the Standard Chartered British-based bank, where they had reported China's world-renowned program that had been attributed as the causes for the debt trap diplomacy known as the Belt and Road Initiative projects, where in Bangladesh it is reported to be over $38 billion. In conclusion, yes, there are troubles in some nations off the rest of the world. It is not just Sri Lanka who have a crisis. And it may be wrong to just simply that all of these foreign debt crises were because of a nation's government's fault or because of alluring debt options given by other nations. It is in fact, as we think it is, a reason led by a lot of factors. Furthermore, for Bangladesh, we will not see a form of a debt crisis in a long time, or maybe none at all. They hold a strong export-driven economy which provides a lot of financial benefits and is still rapidly growing each and every year, driven by the demand for the textile industry. They have a vibrant population rising in the tides of human capital development, which has also provided a strong source of remittance earnings. And lastly, their economy is quite well equipped with a healthy balance sheet, having a low of 38% debt to GDP, which is, as we have not noted yet, is actually low compared to some of the rest of the developing world, ranking them among the lowest, lower than the Philippines, which has a ratio of over 63.5%, Vietnam's 52.7%, or even Pakistan around at 55.1%. While the comparison might not be a good indicator, it still shows how resilient and strong Bangladesh's economy is. Furthermore, the World Bank, through its indicator analysis, also showed that Bangladesh has low risk of external risk distress, an indicator that only some countries in the world have. Anyway, what do you think?